All right, we're talking up the Buckeyes. We got Kevin Noon on the line from Buckeye Grove, joining us last night for the first time on our Ohio State Live that we invite you to join us each and every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Kevin, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Recruiting the lifeblood of any program, and certainly a portion of which Urban Meyer's program you could find a little fault in during his 7 cycles of recruiting. Ryan Day taking over, doing a fine job as well. The offers are being thrown around the country by programs left and right. What is the latest?
Well, Ohio State, they were out of the evaluation period at this point, but kids are coming on campus for camp. So with a couple camps going on, they've been looking at some players there, and some players have been leaving Columbus with an offer in hand. I mean, generally at this point, it's going to be 2021s, 2022s. They kind of know what their 2020 board is going to look like. That doesn't mean that a 2020 offer couldn't go out. We go back a couple weeks ago to an Ohio State camp. Joe Royer, a talented tight end out of Cincinnati, he picked up his offer. It was really kind of a A or B type of situation with him and Luke Lachey, the son of all-time great Jim Lachey, both competing kind of for that same offer. Joe Royer ends up getting the offer. He will be visiting Ohio State soon here on an official visit. But that's where we're really moving to now, is the official visit weekends. They've already had a couple in May, but here in June, this is really where it's going to be. And this weekend is, by all accounts, is a big weekend. The following weekend will be even larger just because of the number of kids that they'll have in, a lot of huge targets. But that doesn't mean there won't be big guys this week, including defensive end Vernon Broughton out of the greater Houston area. He might be the toughest reach out of all of the group because a lot of people think he'll end up either at Texas or at A&M, but you have to take a shot. If he comes on campus, you have a shot. Luke Whippler, who's a commitment already, he an offensive lineman out of New Jersey, he'll be here on his official visit. Ty Hamilton, who's the younger brother of Devon Hamilton out of Pickerington North, he will be on campus as well. I'm sorry, out of Central. I don't want to get in trouble with my neighbors for getting that one wrong. He will be here for a big visit. He's taken a couple looks at Penn State. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a Big Ten battle for him. Jacoby Cowan out of the greater Charlotte area. He's a defensive lineman. He doesn't really talk to the media a lot. A lot of people don't know what he's thinking, and I don't think he really talks to his coaches either in terms of where his recruitment is. I think Ohio State's got a shot to pull him, and the following week, his teammate Kedrick Bingley-Jones, who's also another defensive lineman, will be visiting. I think Ohio State could go 2 for 2 if they want to take both of these guys, and they're both really talented. So, I mean, it's shaping up, and there's some other names too that we could get into. It's going to be a big weekend.
So if we take a step back, Kevin, and look at the 2020 class and how it shapes up, and of course won't be finalized until the first week of February, and about 75 to 85% of it known in mid-December with that early signing period. Obviously, it's going to be highly ranked. It's going to be a top 5 class. But your thoughts in regards to, is there anything in regards to a position target or a geographical get that stands out to you?
Well, I think the biggest name right now in the class that everybody's focused on is the on again, off again, where does he stand situation with Paris Johnson, the offensive lineman out of Cincinnati. It looks like he is going to be shutting things down here after he takes his Ohio State visit. I tend to think that he will stick with his Ohio State commitment. When Urban Meyer left and there was, the uncertainty in the program, he decided to look around a little bit. It certainly has created a lot of indigestion, not only for Ohio State fans, but Ohio State coaches as well. You don't like to see a 5-star, top defensive player or offensive player visit anywhere, especially SEC schools. I mean, I'm not insinuating anything, but you just, you don't want to see that. So if he can shut it down here in a couple weeks, start recruiting again for Ohio State, that's going to be a big deal. One other thing of note is of Ohio State's entire recruiting class at this point, of everybody who's committed, only one player on defense, safety cornerback Legend Cavazos out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. They really need to hammer the defensive side. I think when we get to the end of this month, especially once we get to the end of July, that defensive class will be much more in shape with guys like Court Williams and Clark Phillips and some of these guys who I think will come on board here in the next couple of weeks.
And in the case of Paris Johnson, him being the number 1 offensive tackle in the country and starting to look around and shut down that side of it, it brings to mind, obviously, what happened not too long ago with Jackson Carman. Same position, same highly ranked player at number one at the tackle position, who was leaning heavily. Ohio State had committed and have obviously landed at Clemson.
Right. You can't go 0 for 2 in that type of situation. That Jackson Carman, no, Jackson was his own kid. He definitely was feeling Ohio State for a long time, but he wasn't going to go somewhere just based on where it was on a map and where he was from. And, credit goes to Clemson for going in and doing a lot of work and outworking Ohio State on that one. And, they learned their lesson. And, the flirtations with Paris and other schools has nothing to do with Ohio State making missteps. It's just a matter of, happenstance with, Urban Meyer stepping away from coaching and just that door opening there. But Ohio State has stayed on top of them the entire time. And because of that, I think that everything's going to turn out just fine.
And unless the connections are extremely strong for a particular player based on their fandom growing up or their family lineage and connections to a particular program, we're talking about the elite of the elite. We're talking about the best players. They can go anywhere. Why not look around? Why not gain the experience and leave the options wide open until there has to be a decision made? So it again, as you mentioned, it's not necessarily a knock on any particular program that loses a commitment. It's more so the options are plentiful and they are very enticing. So I can't blame anybody for going out there and continuing to search and keep the decision open. All right, we are breaking down the Buckeyes. We got Kevin Noon on the line from Buckeye Grove. We are going position by position. We encourage you to go back to the video that Kevin and I put together looking at the Ohio State quarterback position. Now we're going to the trenches and what could possibly turn out to be the most problematic position, Kevin, is the offensive line with Thayer Munford coming back, but nobody else along that starting group, although Wyatt Davis got in a couple of key starts late in the season in the Big Ten championship game in the Rose Bowl. Plenty of stars next to these guys' names, but little proven along the offensive front.
Well, let's not forget, Brandon Bowen was a starter at guard. I mean, he's in the mix. He could swing out to tackle. Josh Alabi got a start in the Rose Bowl as well. So, I mean, there are guys that have played. I mean, and more than just coming in and playing on, point after tries and things along those lines. They've seen significant minutes. But, if you really look at things just straight up from how it looks, in the press guide, they're only returning one starter on the offensive line, and there's a lot of concern there too. That's why they ended up going out to Rutgers, getting a graduate transfer in Jonah Jackson, who should step into one of the offensive guard positions. That gives them an all Big Ten performer alongside, Thayer Munford, even though I don't know if he's going to be on the left side or the right side. That's, to be determined at this point. Coaches were very high on Josh Myers at center. That's been a position of high turnover here recently. They've had to move guards to center with Pat Elflein, with Billy Price, with Michael Jordan. Josh Myers came in really as a center. He's been a center all along. I think he's going to perform very well at that position. I think ultimately it just comes down to who is going to be that other starting tackle. Is it going to be Josh Alabi? Is it going to be Brandon Bowen? Is it going to be Nicholas Petit-Friere? A player who he told us during the offseason that he has to eat 8,000 calories a day. I look at a cheese Danish and I gain 5 pounds. He has to eat, he has to wake up in the middle of the night to stay on, to stay at weight. I mean, they need him up there at 295. He's a 5-star type of player. He could step into that role. So they have a lot of options, but you got to remember the nature of an offensive line. They have to move as one, they have to play as a unit. What is going to be the best configuration to get the best 5 out there? And they're going to have something they haven't really had in the past. And I think they're going to have some depth this year. And I think that just because of that, we're going to see some 2s play meaningful minutes, not in the fourth quarter. I think we're going to see them come in just so we're not in a situation down the road where Ohio State is only bringing one starter back and maybe doesn't have the luxury of having, Wyatt Davis playing in a couple games, a Brandon Bowen, a Josh Alabi, those types of guys.
And you touch upon the complexity of the position and what needs to be determined to put together a starting unit versus you're the best wide receiver, you're number 2, you're 3, you're 4, we'll throw you out there. You're the best corner, you're 2, you're 3, you're 4, and we'll throw you out in that manner. This is a group that has to work together unlike any other group on the field. Linebacker, I guess, would be second, but this is far and away the most cohesive unit, or what needs to be the most cohesive unit. So yeah, if a particular player, maybe he's not one of the best 5 in terms of talent and ability, but he can play 3 different positions, and we feel comfortable in these 3 different slots. And then this one guy, wow, he can only play here, and it's a mixing and matching game of trying to figure out what the best unit's going to be on the field.
Exactly. I mean, if your 4 best offensive linemen are all tackles, I mean, what are you going to do at that point? You're going to have to, are you going to slide them inside? I mean, we've seen what happens with a guard that's big. I mean, with Michael Jordan, we saw it with a center that was oversized. I mean, you have to find the right configuration right there. And I think Ohio State is set up, for a good run there. And then, just kind of getting back to the recruiting. I mean, they're going crazy. I think they've got 5 offensive linemen already in the class. We're really going to see a lot of turnover here in the next year or so when it comes to the offensive line, because including Jonah Jackson, the graduate transfer from Rutgers, they only have 5 offensive linemen that are either junior or senior eligibility at this point. I mean, a lot of guys are young guys, so the future of the line is exciting.
It's exciting. They need to clean it up in the run game in particular. They just didn't have quite the dominant performance in the run game, which affected J.K. Dobbins in particular. And that's a key element to getting them where they want to go.
Yeah, exactly. But when you sit there and you have a pass first, pass second type of quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, I mean, you're pass blocking, and you're not exactly exploding off of exploding out there and run blocking at this point. I think with more of a mobile quarterback with Justin Fields and the setup there, we're going to see a return to more run blocking at that situation. J.K. Dobbins went down from something like 7.3 yards per carry as a freshman to something closer to like 4.5 as a sophomore. He did hit 1,000 yards, to become a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher, but he didn't do it until the Big Ten championship game 13 of the season. So, I think he'd be the first to admit that he had an off season, but, it's more than just J.K. Dobbins at that point, the offensive line, but I think it was the scheme too, where they just weren't run blocking as much. And toward the end of the season, especially around Maryland, they had to run block a little bit more. And, I think we saw a little bit of a better outcome from them.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Buckeyes. We've invited in Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove. We encourage you to check out his work. And Kevin joined us last night on our 3rd edition of Ohio State Buckeyes Live and had a good time discussing Ohio State football, past and present. We look at the present and the future at the defensive front. And obviously, this has been a situation in which there has been much pride in the defensive line's play. Some of the great players in recent years going to the NFL coming off of this unit. And it appears, despite the loss of Draymond Jones and, of course, Nick Bosa, to be an outstanding unit once again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all starts with Chase Young. We saw what Chase Young, when he is 100% go, is like. And that was the Penn State game where he was a monster. And, the guy lining up at the other end position, Jonathan Cooper, he's no slouch either. So I think they got a nice 1-2 punch there. And they got young guys with Tyler Friday and Tyreek Smith who are backing them up to give them a solid 2 deep. I think everybody's really excited to see what true freshman Zach Harrison is going to look like. But, don't sleep on a veteran like Jayshon Cornell. I mean, they got a young guy in Jean-Baptiste who took a redshirt season last year. Alex Williams, who kind of seemed to be a positionless guy. I mean, I think he's really found a spot on the defensive line. And then moving inside to tackle, yeah, you do lose Draymond Jones, but when you have a 1-2 punch of Devon Hamilton and B.D. Landers, that's pretty strong right there, and being backed up by Haskell Garrett, Tommy Togiai, Teron Vincent, and a guy who really was not a huge factor last year, Antoine Jackson, the transfer in from by way of JUCO through Auburn. I think he's somebody who really could step up as long as he can stay healthy. I mean, he had nagging injuries all year last year, so Larry Johnson is one of the best teachers of defensive line in college football, and Ohio State's great tradition of recruiting defensive line under him. And even prior to that, none of that's going to be tarnished this year. And I think that the line will be a strength of this team.
Now, obviously, Chase Young's the guy, and we have seen the guy in the past go from being maybe a secondary guy that's a menace to the number one target for an offensive line and their protection um, calls. And for Joey Bosa, it comes to mind how his production slipped his second year. He was still a force. He was still playing just as hard. He might have been even better, but the focus swapped and switched to him. And obviously, without Draymond Jones and Nick Bosa, although Bosa only played 3 games to start the season, Chase Young is going to have to deal with that. I'm the man. They're going to double team me on occasion, and I'm going to have to fight through that. I'm going to have to not become frustrated if the plays, which last year totaled 14.5 tackles for loss and 9.5 sacks, just aren't necessarily there for me.
Right, exactly. And, I think it's going to be really important on that other end position with Jonathan Cooper to be able to step up and take some of the pressure off of Chase Young, because if Chase is getting doubled, having, even triple teamed at that point, Jonathan Cooper is going to have to be able to get to the quarterback. I think they're going to have to make teams think about a pick your poison type of scenario at that point. We've seen Chase Young, though, draw the double. Nick Bosa already out of the lineup. Chase Young still be able to go out there and with his size and speed and moves, be able to defeat that. I think one of the biggest knocks on Chase Young through the years has been he has not been able to keep it on for long periods of time. I mean, he will look great for a play and then, disappear for a play. He'll look great for a series and disappear for 2. He has to get to that maturity level in terms of his game. This is his year. He's going to be a true junior. I mean, he's draft eligible after this year. I mean, the scouts are already really excited about him. He's got to be able to show it, and I think that will motivate him. It's hard being a young player out there being told how great you are going through the prep ranks and everything, and you get to college and you kind of go through a bit of an awakening. And, to keep it turned on for 12 games, I mean, or 14 games or 15 games if you go all the way. I think that's a lot to ask for anybody, but, I think Chase Young just needs to be able to up that as his maturity develops. He becomes more of a leader on the team. And, I think that'll all be there. And I think it'll be coupled with, with the helps of Messrs. Cooper, Friday, and Smith, all helping him out.
And Tyreek Smith is a kid that came in highly touted, as most of these guys did, of course. But also, he discussed, I'm thinking back to the spring game and some of the profiles that were made on the Big Ten Network and the interviews with Tyreek Smith, in that he looked at Nick Bosa as a mentor, and Nick Bosa was a guy that basically placed it on him to say, hey, now is your time to shine. I'm moving on. Draymond's moving on. It's your time to shine. You can really step up and be a factor and be a force on this defense. And Tyreek Smith learned a lot from his leadership, from his not just emotional and inspirational leadership, but also showing him techniques on how to be a refined pass rusher.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he has the tools. I mean, it's just a matter of being able for the game to slow down, for him to be able to put it all together. I mean, he and Tyler Friday both saw a good amount of playing time last year. I think that there's a lot of excitement when you bring up either of them to Larry Johnson. I mean, he gets that little, that little wry smile on his face, because I think he knows he has a couple of good ones there. They're still young pups, but, young pups still can bite. Or, I don't remember exactly the John Cooper quote that he used to use there. He had a lot of good down homeisms, but, I think that the future is going to really be bright with those two guys. And, as true sophomores, we're going to get to see at least, 2 more years of them. I wouldn't expect to see either of them going into a 4th year.
We love the Ohio State football talk with Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove. We encourage you to check out his work there for top flight Ohio State football coverage, and also keep it right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you love the game we love, and of course you do, you're here, then help us build the channel. Grab the Amazon link in the description section below and do your Amazon shopping using that link. It helps us tremendously. Also, 2 exclusive live streams each and every week at the Voice of College Football community that you can catch using that link in the description section below, with live streams involving you. And so more to come on that. Kevin, we appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully we can have you back soon.
Absolutely.